Welcome to Modeling Fundamentals in ProStructures. In part 5, we're going to step into the modifications, or the start of the modifications. The first ones we're going to have a look at will be cut and divide. It's not unusual for us to have a long beam like this one here that we need to cut in half. It's far too long, but it was convenient for us to draw it as one length, and we would like to break it in half now, so that we can, join it up with an intersection and so forth. Now, the modify command is here on D1 in the ProStructures tasks, and it also exists at R1 under the ProSteel. All right, you can see there's a little flyout here beside it where we can go straight to direct tasks, but I would like to bring up the dialog because I think the dialog sort of shows everything a little bit better. Now don't forget, we've got a little graphic down here, show the illustration, so we'd like to kind of do that. It just makes things a little bit easier to see what's going on. All right, the two we're going to deal with today is going to be the divide, okay, and the trim to line and trim to object. In the instance for divide, we can actually set a figure, and you can see here it'll divide it each side of the line we choose. If we put a positive value, we get a gap. And if we put a negative value, we get a lap, for like what you would do with a purlin. So in this instance here, I'd like to divide my beam with a 10 mil gap, and it'll be 10 mil each side, or a 20 mil. So I hit divide, you choose the beam that you'd like to cut, okay, and you can anywhere on this grid line here, anywhere it will create a plane that it will cut that beam in half on. Okay, and you can see there's a little 10 mil gap here. Oh, I beg your pardon, it'll be a 20 mil gap, 10 mil each side. All right. Now, we don't have to do just one. I've got two beams here that I've left as full length that I'd like to cut. So come back to here, divide, again with a 10 mil gap. Okay, and holding down Control, I can select the first and the second while I'm holding Control. Okay, I'm going to have to accept that because it's still asking me to identify the parts. So accept. You can see they've gone black now, and now it's asking me enter the point down, and I want to cut it on that grid number 2. Okay, and that will divide all my objects. Now it's really important that we cut these up before we try and put any connections in. It's really important that the connection to each of these beams is a connection for each end from one object to another. If I put a connection in and then I have to chop the beam in half, there is a risk that the beam could lose associativity of what belongs to where. So, all right. Next thing that we're going to go and have a look at is we're going to have a look at, so we're going to go Object View Centered. I'm going to look at this grid here. We're just going to work on this little corner here over on the left hand side. Okay, there's several different ways I can chop this overhang or interference of one beam into the column. Okay, the first way is I can cut a part at line, and that will create just a generic cut down on the command line here, or prompt line. Identify the part on the side you want it to cut. Okay, or hit reset if you want to select more than one object. So I'm selecting the waist side, and then up here I've got a point because I don't have a line to select. I just have a point that I'm going to nominate. Okay, and that point will be this face of the column, and it's going to sort of ask me what plane, create a plane of this. So up and down there. Okay, and you didn't quite see it happen. It happened pretty quickly, but it's chopped that beam back. Okay. All right, now I'm going to go Control Z just to undo. All right, and I'll show you the next way. The next way is to cut off at an object. Cut one object off on another object. Okay, it's this second button here. All right, and it will ask me, pick the object that you want to cut back, which will be this guy. Select the object that you want to cut it off on, will be here. Now what this does is it creates a logical link between these two objects. An intelligent logical link. So if I was to move this column here, that beam will extend with it. Okay, there is an intelligent link between the two objects. All right. So it's something to be careful of. Now what I'm doing is I'm holding down the right mouse button there to get that context menu up, too, if you're wondering. All right. So if I go into this beam here, and I bring up the ProSteel properties, you can see that I've got a couple of options there now. But if I bring up the ProSteel properties, you can see before we had part list data and general data where we could change the presentation of the object. Now we have a third option here, and that is modification. So it builds a tree, and we can add and remove things. But you can see I've got a little red line there, which represents the cut line, and there is a logical link between this beam and this column. Okay, and I would need to remove it or delete it if I didn't want that. Okay.